The Skinner Building in Juneau, Alaska, August 22nd, 09, massive damages, roofer's propane torch. And here's a big one, Universal Studios in Los Angeles, a whole block burnt to the ground where the set of Back to the Future, King Kong, damages in the hundreds of millions from building loss and revenues. They had to completely rebuild an entire block of Universal Studios in Los Angeles from a roofer's torch. Here's another one, $10,000 for the Epiphany Episcopal Church at 35th Street in Lexington in New York City, May 6, 09. Another one, and here's the one of the last ones I found here in the first few pages that I pulled up. U.S. Treasury Building, June 26, 1996. Unaccountable damages because of the smoke damage of the old artwork and the building itself, because they had many varieties of imported and domestic marble destroyed. That's the U.S. Treasury Building. That was a roofer's propane torch. And a little closer to home, Dufferin and Lawrence, June 2002, a newly built townhouse complex burns to the ground, $5 million plus in damage. Bathurst and Steeles, apartment fire, September 2005, 3 top floors of a 15-story building destroyed, $1.7 million in damage. May 16th, 2008, St. Michael's Hospital, roof catches on fire from a roofer's torch, smoke in the ventilation system. Luckily no one was hurt, and the firefighters weren't hurt also. But you can see, if you go to Google and you check roofer's torch building fire, you will see endless pages of destruction of people's homes, properties, firefighters getting hurt. They're very, very dangerous. So think about it before you get your house or your building or wherever you have your flat roof done by a roofer that's going to put the material on with a propane torch. So we're down here at roof level. I wanted to show you something. This is a typical building, factory type industrial building. Actually, we're on a granite countertop manufacturing facility at Ward and Lawrence. This is about 17,000 square feet we're redoing. But this is a typical Toronto building. You have a steel deck. Underneath, to hold this deck up, you have steel trusses. Then for the walls around the building, they're cinder block. A lot of buildings are made like that a few years back in Toronto. Now, you might be thinking all the ingredients to your building will not catch on fire. Well, you're right about that, but if a torch roofer comes in and torches a roof on, he's going to put a few things underneath his torch applied rubber. One being a paper vapor barrier. Next, you have an ISO insulation. This is a general insulation used. It has paper backing on 2 sides. Then you have a wood fibered insulation. That's a heat separation for the ISO insulation. So you have wood, paper, and paper. Now, a torch roofer brings his torch to your job, starts torching the membrane. He can either light the vapor barrier on fire, the 2 sides of paper to the ISO, or the wood fiber separation board. Even if they use a separation board called recover board, they can still have the underlying materials catch on fire. And that's where you get the smoldering, the stuff underneath catches on fire. Well, what happens is they torch for the day, they catch these ingredients either smoldering or on fire. All the ingredients for the roof then catches on fire. What happens is the flames get so hot up here that they warp the steel deck and they warp the underlying trusses. Once your trusses and steel deck are warped on your metal building, they usually cannot be fixed. The only fix is to take all the steel decking and trusses out, and if the cinder block walls didn't get too hot and can be saved, then you'd have to redo the trusses and the steel deck on top of them. A lot of the times they get so hot that the cinder block blows apart, then you have to rebuild you're rebuilding your entire building because you've hired a torch roofer. A lot of the buildings catch on fire every year because torch roofers catch the actual roofing ingredients on fire, not the building itself, but then the heat of the fire of these roofing ingredients then warps your building, and you completely have to rebuild the building, which costs a lot of money. So just because you have steel, cinder block ingredients in your building that probably won't catch on fire, the roof system catches on fire and wrecks the other ingredients to your building. So don't think that because your roof is a steel building, it is not susceptible to fire damage. When you're getting estimates for your flat roof, and you're considering torch-on roofing application, one thing you really want to look into is the roofer's insurance. The reason being is that there's a lot of roofers going around Ontario without torch-on application insurance, and the reason why that is that insurance can be upwards to $100,000 to purchase, depending on their annual sales. It can be $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, right up to $100,000. So a lot of roofers are going around Ontario and torching roofs on without insurance. Now, if a roofer burns down your building or your home without insurance, do you think your insurance will pick up the bill? Also, even if they do have torch application insurance, look at their coverage. The reason being is that you have to take into account your building burning down, the contents burning, and if it's a business, you have to look into lost revenues too. So you have to put all that together and expect the worst, because you never know, and the building could burn to the ground. Also, when the roofer that torch applies your roof, if he doesn't follow the steps that the insurance company wants him to, he won't be covered. And what I mean is there's two main steps. At the end of his work day, he has to scan the roof with an infrared scanning gun. And what that does is it looks for hot spots, because with torching you have a thing called smoldering. And as you're torching along, you catch something on fire, but you bury it with the actual reinforcement material that you're torching down. You bury that fire. What it does is it doesn't flame at that point, but it smolders like a piece of charcoal. You get the roof done, you go home. If you're a torch roofer, you go to bed. In the middle of the night, the building burns down, because 3 to 4 hours later, the smoldering turns into a fire and it burns your building down. That's one thing. And the one thing the insurance wants you to do because of smoldering is the roofer is, when he's done his day and he's completed and the torch is turned off, he has to sit at the job site or up on the roof for 1 hour after the roof is applied to check for smoldering and hot spots. And you also have to use that infrared gun to check for hot spots. If he does not do those two things and your building burns down, you won't be covered for any damage loss. So take these things into consideration. Really look into insurance, because this is a very important topic in roofing, and roofers burn down buildings like crazy. So when you're considering a torch applied roof, look into the roofer's insurance very deeply.